Hi guys, it is Dom here from Soundstage. Just had the wonderful opportunity of chatting to Jason Wilsher-Mills, an incredible artist who has taken inspiration from his disability and the challenges to create world-renowned art, which also touches communities in Yorkshire and very, very far beyond that. It was an incredible opportunity to chat to Jason, who is currently in residence at the Wellcome Collection in London. He's also exhibiting at the Ferrens in Hull. So again, he's everywhere in the UK. Again, amazing work around disability, using his background, using his history as inspiration for colourful, vibrant work. So please do support Jason if you can. And thank you so much for checking this out as well. I really appreciate your time as always. I've been Dom. This is Sounds for Magazine. And yeah, support Jason Wilsher-Mills. Speak to you soon. Bye. So, Jason, yeah, thank you again for making the time. I've been a fan of your work since discovering it, and obviously lots of people around the country and around the world now are a big fan of your work. What, how has your understanding of success changed? Because I know that you were classic, you were a trained artist, but
Yeah,
then you went into
yeah,
digital media and your world has opened up because of that.
yeah.
You do workshops, you travel around the country. So how has your definition of success as an artist changed?
Blimey, it's you know something, because it's feast and famine, the way that I work. Like, so I can do something really amazing, for like 6 months, and then there'll be no for the next 6 months. So I'm always kind of looking over my shoulder a bit, and I think that's the working class sort of side of me as well. Like, we're always kind of concerned about paying the mortgage and like, all that kind of stuff. So success for me is that really can this year is the first year that I've got a wage for next year as well. So and a bit into the year after as well. So it's a really lovely situation to be, and especially if you have a disability, because I'm waiting for 3 operations. So I've got to earn. Success for me is earning enough that I can actually be ill and I don't have to work through like pain and stuff.
Mm.
And so it's a really complex thing, but because you'll be aware of this, Dom, there's a bit of a mathematical formula with disability and earnings and stuff. We have to earn, I think it's 500 quid more a month than anybody else because we have all these extra kind of costs
Yeah.
that and 500 quid a month is pretty conservative given my I've just made a bit of profit and it's probably going to go into a new powered chair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Damien Hirst doesn't have to do that. He just
Yeah.
buys a Rolls Royce.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? And I think that's one of the things that I'm so happy for you because again, to see what you've achieved has been amazing. And so the sort of extension of that question is, what about legacy? Because you have, again, you're exhibiting all over the country. You have exhibited around the world as well. From the very beginning of your career, really. So, do you? Some artists and creatives, musicians as well, see legacy as a bit of a dirty word. It's not really up to that person, etc. But do you think about your legacy much as an
Oh,
artist, Jason?
blimey. Well, one of the things that really triggered me, this is a legacy thing. When
Mm.
I was in hospital, part of the Wellcome Collection thing
Hmm.
is me hearing Strawberry Fields Forever for
Hmm.
the first time and thinking, Christ, there's somebody out there that is kind of creative like me. It was like a beacon signal. Now, uh, that's a legacy that's been passed to me. I hope that I can have a similar kind of thing whereby, well, one, my kids are proud of me and think, he was a bit weird, my dad, but he's kind of doing, you know, the job was interesting in the end, and he's got work there and stuff.
Mm.
But I think it's that little weird kid from a council estate that sees my work as in my case, it was listening to something that kind of triggered off kind of a process.
Mm.
But I hopefully there's a kid that see a little kid, a little geezer somewhere who sees my work and kind of experiences something, that's like, oh, there's someone else. He's he speaks in a way that's similar to how I speak and think and stuff.
Yeah.
So legacy for me is like a creative passing on the creative thing and
Yeah.
getting other people into it. And I think I'm from Wakefield, but I live in the Midlands now, just down the road from Creswell Crags. It's got the oldest cave paintings in the UK. So they're about 8,000 years old. So these little hands with pigment on them pressed against the cave wall. And for me, Christ, that's a legacy. The
Yeah.
fact that there's a little kid 8,000 years ago is saying, remember me. That
Mm.
if art is only that, it's amazing the fact that, you know, hopefully in 100 years or whatever, people will still be engaging with my work and it will actually have captured something that was important.
Yeah, yeah, I think so, and certainly, as someone going to the Wellcome Collection, seeing that work, you know, going back to your experiences growing up, on Withensea and beaches and things like that, and those images seem to play such a key role in your work. Beautiful to consume as an outsider, in terms of the colors and the vibrancy of it. But can you tell me on an emotional level? You mentioned there, like I say, just being a young kid, how much did that stuff impact you when you were younger? The gravity of the situation. I remember being in hospital and just being in loads of pain and not understanding it
Yeah, yeah,
until I
yeah,
was older. I got it then why I was
yeah,
being,
yeah,
in
yeah.
hospital, etc. And I remember, this beautiful work, very colorful, very vibrant. Kind of, it was like it was really fantastic to behold. But I kind of wanted to ask you, the reality of it. It sounds like you went through quite a lot, a very, very
Well,
difficult period.
I've said this many times that the Welcome Collection, even though it deals with some really kind of uh, quite deep issues such as
Mm.
mortality and stuff, it's a PG version of what
Yeah,
happened,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I all I will say to a certain extent is I was in hospital when there was stuff happened, and I was in bed for a year,
Mm.
and it was a really difficult period, and there wasn't the regulations in place. Like the NHS is amazing,
Yeah.
amazing,
Mm.
but it was still quite a difficult place to be as a kid, and so there's sort of lots of different levels
Mm.
to that experience. I would not be here if not for the NHS. The NHS is we should be building statues 200 foot high on the end of every street, to remind people, how amazing the NHS is. But it was a really difficult thing. I was away from my family for a long time. I was really frightened. Um, uh, that there was kind of conversations about my dying and stuff, so it was thinking, wow, this is a bit, but as a kid you kind of think it's entertaining in a way, you think, oh, this. And people, what was really good about hospital is that people would bring your stuff in on visiting time. It was really cool, like, so you get like, I remember my sister signing me up for the unexplained, so I got like these binders with about Bigfoot and stuff, and I thought it was really cool. But um, yeah, so it was like there was extremes, and I was really frightened a lot of the time. For instance, I was terrified of going into an iron lung, which is, I mean, I'm still unbelievably claustrophobic,
Right.
and as a result of that fear. But and if you look at the history of my work, I mean, I studied fine art at Cardiff in 89 to 92. I was making images about a kid in bed then. It's a bit like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where Richard Dreyfuss is like building that hill, the mountain where the aliens come. And I've been doing this because it was the epicenter of everything. And if you think as well, like I was 11 when I went into hospital. I was just starting puberty. I was like thinking, oh, I should be with my mates, getting off with girls and sort of So it was like a really confusing time.
Mm.
And if I was very lucky that I was born with the gene that makes me creative. So I was able to try from a very early age to try and make sense of it through drawing and making art about it.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing the resonance that it has. And one of the things I'm going to talk about when I do the Welcome Collection tour is what I felt when I saw, the giant caliper, and then obviously the caliper kid, as you've referenced in interviews
Yeah,
previously. That really, that was a painful experience for me. I wore calipers
yeah,
for the majority of my life, and then you turned it into something that was, again, colorful, vibrant. And I understand it as a PG version for you, something that's easy to consume, but it did make me smile to see
yeah, yeah,
the caliper kid. That
yeah.
that resonated with me, and it was beautiful. And I wonder, for you, to take these very difficult memories of your own, I know you may find it difficult to talk about, so obviously, whatever you're comfortable with, to take these very difficult memories of your own and then put them out there for the world to see now. How easy or difficult has that been for you through your career?
I'll tell you something, Dom. It was really weird when we had the opening
Mm.
because my family, the northern lot, they came down from Wakefield to London, and they're like they experienced it. They were there. They were actually, that they were there when it all happened. And I was suddenly really panicking. I thought, bloody hell, what if they kind of freak out about it? And
Yeah.
they were featured. They're featured in a lot of the work. There's like lots of references to them. So yeah, I always remember Tracy Emin's brother saying, "Please, please stop including me in your work." And you do have a duty of care really to the people that you include and stuff. But fortunately, it goes down really well. But there's not. It is really weird that you've got this psychic epicenter, this thing that you know happened in your life, and you got kids walking about and pressing the buttons and which is amazing. And you got adults. I've seen adults sort of laughing 1 minute and then having a bit of. I mean, I've had people. A mother came to me and she said she was in tears, bless her, and she said my son wore those caliper boots, and she said I don't know how you knew, but we used to have to paint stars on them to make him wear them.
Yeah.
And she said, that's the only and she said, how did you know? And I said, well, it's because I wanted to wear Doc Martens and be like, be like my mates and like be fashionable and do all those things, all those experimental stuff that you do, the mistakes you make with fashion as a kid. And,
Yeah. Oh,
you
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you know, but we were given these really horrible caliper boots. Now, I'm from the Mel Brooks sort of school of making art, in the thing that troubles you most, in his case, it was what his family had experienced at the hands of the Nazis, was to then put the Nazis in tutus and humiliate them. So I try and use, I never, take the mick out of disability or the experience of disability. What I do is I sort of satirize my own, use myself as the kind of clown, really, and put myself up there to kind of say the things that other people might find difficult. And there's only us that can say it because we own it. We
Yeah.
if anybody, people that wore calipers, late 70s, early 80s, we all look at each other and we know because they were obsessed about making people walk in those days.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how you looked
Yeah.
or how you felt. It was about you had to be like everybody else, and they were painful and they were ugly, and so yeah,
Yeah.
it's about turning on its head and coming up with a way of dealing with it, really.
Yeah, again, it really resonated with me, and and I saw it resonate with other people too, and it's just a pleasure to see how well you've done. I think what's most fascinating about you, Jason, is I remember you've said in previous interviews that your work's a bit like Beano meets I Daniel Blake,
Yes,
and
yeah, yeah,
I love the idea where, for me as a consumer, it feels like what's come straight from your brain in all of its weird and wonderful glory is what we see inflated. The
yeah, yeah,
Argonauts. The
yeah,
Argonauts are a great example of that. And again, artists talk all the time about the difficulty to getting their vision out there exactly as they want it. Musicians too, of course. So what is it like? Because for me,
Yeah.
I've gone straight into your brain and
Yeah.
pulled the exact vision out. Is it that simple, or am I simplifying it down?
Well, there's 55 years leading up to it and
Yeah, of
experience.
course.
It's kind of what it, but it is. I'm a bit obsessed with William Blake at the moment,
Mhm.
so I'm interested in like the notion of the state of grace. When I'm making art, I feel it in my stomach. It's overwhelming. The piece of work in the Wellcome Collection show, the hippo scare, it wasn't about being scared of a hippo at the zoo. It was about how you felt about this thing that was so overwhelming. And as a kid from a working class culture, we didn't know who Michelangelo was.
Mm.
We didn't know who Leonardo was. We'd vaguely heard of Van Gogh because of the old ear thing, you know. But there was a artist. My dad was a coal miner. We didn't spend any time talking about aesthetics and stuff. It was about, where the next meal was going to come from. So, but I was really fortunate that I grew up like being brought up on like British 1930s musical comedy, which is crazy. It's absolutely like Will Hay, George Formby, and these really bizarre thing, really bizarre. Growing up in the 70s as well was insane. Like everything was like sort of turned up to 11, and there was like as a kid, I remember TV just being like loads of nudity, loads of violence, nothing filtered, and interior design was crazy. There's a photograph of me with purple and orange trousers. That's what was done to you as a kid. We had a mural of Under the Sea in the
Yeah,
bathroom. All that stuff goes in. And also the only art that I ever saw as a kid was at Withensea at the fairground.
yeah, yeah,
So seeing these things hand painted, and I thought, blimey, there's something going on here. It all goes in, and then you formalize it through art education. But Picasso said this: you spend all your life trying to be a kid again, and that's I mean, I I think all my work is about childhood
yeah,
and childhood trauma, basically.
yeah,
That's and it sounds dreadful, but it isn't. I found a way of dealing with it that's both joyous, and people actually laugh and cry at the same time. But
yeah,
that's what when it works really, when you get that resonance,
yeah.
spot on.
Absolutely, yeah, and I've seen that reaction, that raw reaction, and I think it's a great testament to your work. One of the things that I also love is that you have taken your vision to schools, to
Yeah.
communities around the country. Now, again, as someone that started, training, I guess, the classical way as an artist that went into digital work as obviously things change, circumstances change. Did you ever envision that as a route for you where you're working with school kids all over the country? And I remember, hearing an interview where one of the best things you've had is teachers and people have said, "Oh, they're not going to be able to do this. They're not going to be able to do that."
Oh
which
yeah,
I,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, which I heard a few times when I was younger, and it must be such a magical thing to be able to do that with someone. So what is that like, to connect with those communities, and was that always your intention to do?
No, it was. I'm very much of the Withnail, and I came on holiday by accident. I became an artist by accident. There was I suddenly about yeah. I mean, I was doing it. I had to do loads, thousands of workshops. I mean, I stopped counting. I think we were on 65,000 people I'd worked with in workshops. I, I I can't do that as much now because it's exhausting and because the kind of other bit. But the big breakthrough for me was working with adults, communities of adults with learning
Mm,
disabilities.
mm.
If you have a disability, everybody thinks you're an expert on every disability.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I thought I was going into those communities like with like a knight and
Mhm,
saving them and giving them a voice. I can remember, I'm ashamed to say, I said, well, I'm giving these people a voice.
mhm,
They've got their own voices.
mhm. Mm.
got their own voices, they can
Yeah.
use them. And what they did was the other thing, they gave me a voice. They gave me a kind of understanding that I didn't have.
Mm.
We formed lasting friendships, you know, that Anthony, a guy that I worked with,
Yeah.
who's become a legend,
Yeah.
comes to every opening that I have. And I feel so kind of lucky to be, you know, to have him in my life as a friend, you know. And he's such a character. He's such an unbelievable character.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could spend my life making art just about Anthony because he's so interesting. You know, he's got a really fascinating bloke.
Mm.
But yeah, it wasn't giving them a voice, it was giving me a voice. It was finding a bit of humility as well in
Mm.
myself and sort of not because there's some kind of artists who think the kind of, you know, Moses coming down the mountain with the answers. I think art should be about asking the question, not giving the answers. It's, you know, Christ, I want you to ask me for directions. I mean, yeah, you know where the shop is, mate? I'm stood outside Asda. No, well, yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
it's kind of it it's more interesting to be vulnerable and more interesting to be kind of say, look, I don't know the answers. I really don't know. I'm just marveling at, you know,
Yeah.
life and the world. And, you know, I mean, there's artists who've spent years. There's a Spanish artist who used to paint this tree,
Mm.
and he painted it every day, and he used to change the painting every day. So when the fruit started to grow, the branches came down and he'd repaint it. And I thought, blimey, that's commitment.
Yeah.
But again, that was the way that he communicated these. And
Yeah.
it's they're all saying, you know, here I am, basically. Here I
Yeah.
am, you know, this is me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I've got one to squeeze in that I hadn't necessarily planned to ask. I want to be respectful of your time, Jason, but I
Oh,
think
you're
one
all
of
right.
oh, thank you. Well, I think one of the things that struck me there was you talk about you learned humility. Now, again, you've changed physically. You know, obviously through your artistic career, things have happened to you, but in terms of maybe things you've learned about yourself. So, like who you were when you started as an artist, again, is very different to who you are now,
Yeah,
right? You
yeah.
could see that through previous interviews, through your work itself. So, how would you say, in your own words, you've changed and developed? What have you learned about yourself from the beginning of your career as an artist right up until this point?
I think one of the main things looking back, if you'd have said to me 2011, that's when I made the decision to, you know, to go for it. Right, you can do this and you can be successful. All I was ever going to do was, oh, I'll sell postcards. I'll do this. I'll do the odd.
Mm,
If you'd have told me that my work had been bought for the nation, it's in the national collect. If I was going to be at the, I would have said you are insane. It just seemed so far removed from my experience. But the thing I will say is, and this is a question I get so much so asked so many times by young artists,
mm,
how do you do it, Jason? Well, you do it by putting the hours in. It's you
mm,
do it, and you do it, and you do it, and then you have a bit of luck.
mm,
You have a little bit of luck because you're in the right place at the right time. And I always say to young artists as well, is stick with be committed to the work that you make.
mm.
Don't start doing landscapes if that's not your gig.
Yeah.
Do the work that you're passionate about, even
Mm,
if it's, I don't know, knitting, or do it and do it really, really well, because you do get noticed. But success is all kind of relative anyway. It's
mm,
somebody I honestly, in my wildest dreams, never planned for this to
mm,
happen. You know, to be last year, I was giving interviews in Japan about one of my sculptures being attacked. You know, in Wakefield, and I was thinking, blimey, this is like, how do you even, you know, contain this? But I've got a family that keep me feet on the ground. Like, yeah, 'cause at home, I don't talk about my career. I don't talk
right.
about just kind of just get on with it really. And
Yeah.
it's a job. It's something I do, and uh, people like it. But yeah, it's that journey from that
Yeah.
starting point, Dom, to where I am now. Blimey, it's
Yeah.
mind blowing.
It's incredible. You've got a very northern attitude to it as well.
Yeah,
Like, I just get on with it, and don't
yeah,
it's very interesting because again, it's global now. You've gone
yeah,
global,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
so it's fascinating to hear that perspective. I think one of the things that really connects with me is again that work you do with young people. Now, I'm also privileged to do some work with young people in schools and colleges around journalism and the media, and what I encounter a lot is I can't do this. I'm not going to be able to do that, as you've talked about before. But what happened for you is you took your skill and you pivoted. You got an iPad,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
in 2010 you got an iPad and you pivoted, and then you got you send these ideas. You've got is it Kevin up in Leeds? You've got
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you send your ideas, and then they're there. You can blow them up and you can set them up. And I want to sort of ask you about the sort of technical side of that in terms of sort of timeline for anybody watching this or listening to it or reading about it. Um, what is the timeline for
Blimey.
these works?
Well, yeah,
From that vision to
at the moment, I'm designing a new inflatable sculpture for Scarborough, and I'm doing I love that. I love that. It's going to be a gallery in Scarborough, Crescent Arts, and it's going to be a giant crab, and it's going to have a hot fudge sundae on its back because they've got Scarborough's got this amazing ice cream parlor, and I thought, oh, I wonder what it looked like on top of a crab. And when I drew it, I thought, oh, I like that. There's something interesting there, and then it leads you on to something else.
mm,
So I'll start drawing, and I'll draw it from every angle:
mhm,
above, sides, underneath, in front, behind.
mm,
That process takes about 100 hours.
mm,
That then goes into Photoshop, and a 3D file is created. If it's an inflatable sculpture, it goes off to the company, and it's like making a suit.
mm,
They decide where all the seams are, and where the fan goes and stuff like that. Uh, I design skins as well that are superimposed onto the top of the 3D form. So literally, every mark that I make goes on to the sculpture. And there's a real sort of dialogue about it, right? I
mm,
want the arm over there. I want this. The head has to be bigger.
mm.
If I'm doing stuff with Hot Knife, they'll superimpose my original drawings onto the 3D file to make sure everything is in proportion and looks and exactly like it should do from my drawings. And there's a real sort of relationship going on. Um, but it's a long process, and it's expensive. It's not this, and it's much of the process is dictated by disability and kind of the way that I work and how I am. But to be honest, Damien Hirst has been doing it years. He wasn't doing those 30-foot bronzes, himself. Michelangelo didn't do the angels in the background and stuff. It's absolutely okay to collaborate on pieces because, as I said, as a disabled person,
Mm,
I could be chiseling away and doing
mm.
all that stuff. But what I can do is ensure that the integrity and the authenticity of the voice
Yeah.
is absolutely there, and I'm part of the process 100%. Note gets out without me saying that's what I want it to be. And like the Wellcome Collection was hand painted by a team,
Mm.
that the figures, and again, they literally copied to the millimeter what I'd done with my hands.
Wow.
So I mean, you can't even see it done, but at the top of the caliper boot, if we lowered that leg down, it's like a ham joint. You can't. And I took 2 or 3 days to design it,
Mm,
but you can't even see it because it's too far up. We
mm.
ought to maybe have one on its side so we can see, because it's just like a ham joint, and
Yeah.
I wanted that joke in, that I thought it was quite funny, but Yeah, I'm very lucky who I work with as well because we've got a really good trust-based relationship. Sometimes the discussions are quite robust,
Mm.
and you know, but that means that everything is kind of hard fought, and everything that I do is kind of it passes that test, that kind of authenticity test.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, you can see that in the work and how enthused staff at the Welcome Collection are. People
Yeah,
are there. It's wonderful.
yeah,
I think if I could ask you for some realities, then for any young person, any young disabled person, any young artist, your work transcends ability, and obviously, it's around the world now. So cultures. For any artist that wants to get into the industry, what are the barriers? And I appreciate this is a different question for yourself, for someone with a difference in disability. What are the barriers that you've had to overcome? What are the realities that you maybe don't hear on the? You can become an artist. You can do everything
yeah,
you want,
yeah,
which is wonderful, and I love
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But what are some of the realities that
It
perhaps don't
it
get talked about?
it's sadly the two that you'd expect: access, but also finance. That thing at that point I made. I have to kind of negotiate for the support that I'm going to need to do a project.
Yep.
Because if I travel anywhere, I have to travel with someone who makes sure that I'm okay, that I'm safe, that I've got my personal care sort of in place and stuff. So it's 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 really difficult, and that I get funding from Access to Work that
Mm,
covers most of it. It don't cover all of it. It doesn't cover. So right, I always feel like in a race, all the other competitors, the able-bodied artists, are ahead of me, and I've got to start off like 20 yards behind them and catch up. So that makes me work really hard.
mm,
And I'm it's not limited to disability being a disabled artist, but it's part of a societal thing where people
mm,
have to a disabled person spends more.
mm,
We use the car more because
mm.
that's how we get around, you know.
Yeah.
I'm having to use the train a lot more because I can't drive as much as I used to.
Mm,
So, but there's also kind of like really awful things about
mm,
access, such as getting going to a gallery for an opening night. Imagine this: you've got work. I had work in London about 15 years ago. Most exciting thing that ever happened to me at that point, and it was in a little gallery on Cork Street, and they said, "We've got a ramp for you." I'm not lying. That ramp was like that, and I just said, I'm not going to use it. I
yeah.
refuse to use that. I did something for a TV program, an arts program. I couldn't even get into the green room, so I had to use a loo that was half a mile down the road. It was a very important thing I was filming, and I thought, shall I walk? Shall I leave this?
Mm,
And I was weighing it up in my head, oh blimey, what that? Because this is completely out of order.
mm,
So stuff like that you would not even expect in a million years to be an issue for everybody else. Like, can I just go to the loo?
yeah. Yeah.
Can, if I do this job, can I go to the loo? Can I get in? Because this is the most common thing you get. It's accessible, Jason. Don't worry about it. It's fully accessible. And you get there and you say, yeah, oh, I forgot about those stairs. I forgot about, the toilets in Uruguay. And, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, because it's not your experience. So I've started doing an access rider now.
Wonderful.
So like, and it's about educating galleries that I work with as well. So I'll say, look, if we have a meeting, I've got to take medication. The medication has this impact on me.
Mm,
I'll need like a flapjack or something because I need something to soak up the medication.
mm,
Literally spell things out, like, because
yeah.
it's the only way. And try bloody transport as well. You, so in London, I have to use taxis.
Yep. Same.
Yeah, there is no way I would use the underground. I once got stuck on it, and this guy had to lift me off. It
Yeah.
was it was awful, and I thought I will never ever try that again.
Yeah.
That is the overground's all right, but underground's just So you get taxis. I had some work at the Balloon Museum, and I went to the opening earlier this year. It was late at night. It was really cold because it was right side at Thames,
Mm.
and they'd sent like a huge van as a taxi to pick me up because it was dark. I couldn't see
Mhm.
the entrance very well. So I zoom up the ramp, smack my head on the, and
Yeah.
honestly, it took me a couple of days because it really knocked myself.
Mm.
But you kind of think no one else has to experience that other than us,
Mhm.
and we're not only experiencing it, we're having to pay extra to do it
Yeah.
because the infrastructure's not there. It you go mad if you really got angry
Yeah.
about everything, and the way that you got to anger is pointless. You can use it, it's an energy, but
Mm.
it's really important not to let it get take hold of you because
Yeah.
there are things that are wrong, and it's the only way we can change them is a daft bit of art at a time. I think for me, by making people think, perhaps maybe
Yeah.
be a bit kinder. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
being out there, being visible, and being out
yeah,
there as
yeah,
you
yeah.
are, And I think again, just going back to your story at the beginning with that lady that you saw, the more people that maybe know what disability is, but the more people that don't as well, that see your work, connect with it, the more understanding there is. That's it. If they see your work and they see the impact it has, then hopefully some more understanding it will be there.
Well,
I
hopefully
think
it'll stop all that. What's wrong with you?
yeah, that absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So what? There's no wrong with me, mate. I'm
No,
I'm 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 tickety boo. I'm fantastic.
yeah, yeah,
And inspiration. You're inspirational.
yeah,
And I think it's great to inspire people. I love it.
yeah.
But what do you think of my work?
That's it. Yeah,
I love it when I get slagged off in press or something. I mean, it's
right.
hard, but Daily Telegraph did a review of my work once and said it really is as bad as it sounds. And I thought fair dues,
Right.
as they're judging the work as it is,
Hmm.
and it's their opinion, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
They're not saying it's crap because he's a disabled artist or how inspirational he is, or it is the review in Time Out were it was sort of struggling. It was struggling with it, which I
yeah,
thought it's one of my favorite reviews because he was like, so he's using like celebratory images to say
yeah,
something serious. He couldn't get his head round it, but it wasn't because a lot of the reviews have had like, well, it's an amazing story and stuff,
yeah.
which is lovely. It's really lovely that,
Mhm.
but I like it when the work's judged as
Yes.
because there's I'm making a statement with this exhibition. I want to be at the table with,
Mm.
um, I want to be invited by Tracy Emin to a yacht in the Mediterranean and, hang out with Grayson and all. And, I think there's room at the top table and, it's kind
Yeah,
of, but I want to get there on like, well,
the
here's the
merit.
work. Yeah, here's the
Yeah,
work. Here I am, move over sort of thing.
yeah, absolutely. Make room, make
Yeah,
space.
yeah,
Absolutely, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Of
absolutely, yeah. Have you got time for three more, Jason?
course, mate. Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah.
I've got loads, but I'll try. I know we've obviously just again looked at some of the barriers there. From a disability standpoint. What about geography? Now, you're getting everywhere anyway. You're finding ways to get to London. You're finding ways to get your work to galleries all over the place. Now, one of the big common things I have from young people, particularly when I do work in, say, like a Hull, which I know
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
done a lot of
yeah,
work in, Lincoln, some of these cities, Scunthorpe, that don't necessarily have what you would call an artistic history, and
yeah,
also
yeah.
don't get a lot of funding for various things, which I know that you have knowledge of. Has location and geography been a barrier for you in any way? And what would you say to a young person that goes, "Oh, I'm from old Jason. I can't be an
Uh,
artist, mate."
Yeah, well, I think it actually goes in your favor sometimes.
Right.
Now, this is a really practical thing. The Arts Council has these areas that low engagement, low arts engagement.
Mhm.
So the most of Lincolnshire was like in that area. They've just suddenly got a huge investment on the East Coast. Hull, I it's been a second home as Hull. I really sort of relate to it because it's a northern working class city. Um, but there is a hell of a lot happening in terms of the arts. There's Artlink Hall, there's Humber Street, there's Ferrens are doing great, absolutely fantastic outreach work.
Mhm.
There's organizations for young people and young artists that are not patronizing the like real, the like,
Mhm.
you know, the business. It's like proper stuff. My advice is to get involved with those groups because together you're stronger and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Um, Funding is difficult and um, it's been a trial and error, but the Arts Council are trying to make it simpler for people to apply and get funding. I still think it's amazing, Dom, that you can write, however long that document is, but basically you can write, I want to do this idea. I want to do this idea. Will you give me money to do it? And they
Yeah.
say, even if they say no, they say, this is all the things that you need to change.
Yeah.
Change those things, resubmit it, and we'll have another think.
Yeah.
And usually you get it. And I think, you know, blimey, that is like stunning. But
Mhm.
that economy is really important.
Mhm.
So uh, get involved. I think being from a place where there's low arts engagement, it actually, like I said, goes in your favour because
Mhm.
the Arts Council I know are really sort of pumping money into Scunthorpe. There's 2021. 2021 is one of the best galleries in the country,
Mhm.
and it's got some fantastic people working there. That's where I got my big break as well. So I'm always going to be really grateful, you know, to that.
Yeah.
And they've got struggles as well because the local council are constantly trying to change it into a science venue or whatever. When it's this lovely, amazing sort of community-based gallery
Mhm.
that really engages people. Um, so try and I've said to this is what I say to young people because this is what I said to myself from that background is don't let that chip on your shoulder, you
Mhm.
know, get in the way, really. Use
Mhm.
the energy because I think grumpiness, northern grumpiness, is a superpower. Use it, use that chip because don't come I've still got a chip the size. I was talking about this something this morning, and I thought, oh, bloody hell, Jay, you've still got that working class
Yeah.
kind of chip on your shoulder, but use it, use
Mhm.
that as your superpower. You know that grumpiness and
Yeah.
that inability to shift sometimes, because
Yeah.
it will get you through. And I know, I always answer if I get an email or a message from a young artist, young disabled artist. I always answer them, and in stuff that I do now, Dom, like the Ferrens exhibition,
Mhm.
I got two commissions
Mhm.
for young disabled artists. They were paid commissions, so they were part of the thing. James, a young photographer who takes photographs with an eye gaze, so it's
Right.
a real amazing thing. And Emily, who wrote this amazing piece of poetry about a piece of my work that had to be censored many times. So what the hell did you write that for, Emily? What's up with you? But it was but I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud that a sculpture about changing places, access to toilets, everywhere it's been so far, a changing places toilet usually
Yeah.
follows.
Yeah.
Small things, but the big really
A,
are the,
a,
you
a
know.
big, yeah, that's huge. And again, that impact on your work goes back to that legacy question.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Before we do the roundup, then Jason, I have to ask because obviously you know it's in the Wellcome Collection as well, and you've talked about it previously. Your creative inspirations, music. obviously visual stuff, movies. You talked about Ken Loach, for example.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, can you tell me about your visual and musical inspirations, the bands, artists that you
Yeah,
listen to, films that you watch? What kind of stuff is it that really gets you going?
well, in the 80s, it was the Smiths. I was absolutely obsessed with them. That because there was that they were like the musical equivalent of stuff that I'm
Yeah.
trying to do. I love The Fall and New Order, and uh, I kind of I, I suppose the kind of foundation stone of everything has been the Beatles because
Mhm.
they're I still find the what they did in in the time they did it in.
Mhm.
1963, She Loves You. 64, Strawberry Fields Forever. It's 4 years. 4 years. They look like they've aged 30 years. Never mind. Yeah, it's unbelievable. And, I find that really fascinating. I find uh, Brian Wilson, Beach Boys,
Mhm.
lunatic, but incredible. Filled his studio up with sand because he wanted to bring the beach inside.
Yeah.
I love that. William Blake, I think, is like I- I've only just kind of really discovered him, but all the things he's talking about, a state of
Mhm.
grace and that
Mhm.
kind of the levels of creativity and the states of mind and stuff are really fascinating.
Yeah.
Um, Frida Kahlo, Philip Guston. I've nicked most of my ideas from Philip Guston. Thank you, Philip. I think, if you love somebody, copy them. It's okay. They'll thank you for it. Um, but yeah, and reading like Charles Dickens, I
Mhm.
really relate to Great Expectations. In
Mhm.
fact, it's referred to in the Wellcome Collection
Mhm.
show. The selling graphic novels of
Mhm.
Great Expectations because I identified with Pip. I wanted to get out of the foundry and be be a gentleman, as he calls it. But to me, being a gentleman was kind of an artist. It was
Mhm.
like, it was sort of uh, getting off the council estate and having new experiences.
Yeah.
And up till then, young working class lads, it was boxing, sport, or you went in the army or something, or committed a crime.
Mhm. Mhm.
So um, there weren't many role models for me, really. So I had to invent one.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, it's great to hear about some of those inspirations because they are littered. If people go to the Welcome Collection or any of your exhibitions, they are littered through your work. And you know, again, just going back to some of your musical inspirations there, that's good stuff. You know, it's good stuff. Jason, then before we round up, obviously, you know, I know that you've just exhibited in the Ferrens. You know, I know you've
Yeah,
got some permanent stuff there now,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Obviously, the Welcome Collection is ongoing. What is next for you? Is there anything you've got to plug and promote, or you want to shout about before we finish up today that I might have missed?
Well, just what all I'll say to people is watch this space. There's some really big stuff coming along. I'm going to be doing stuff in the homeland again, and there's an announcement hopefully, and by the homeland I mean Wakefield. There's going to be announcement in August about that, I think.
Mhm.
Then we've got the welcome. I mean, the Welcome Collection shows on till January, so yeah,
Mhm.
go and see that. And then it's going to tour
Mhm.
um, the UK. So yeah, I've got so there's loads coming. There's loads and loads, but unfortunately, like most things, it's I'm not allowed to say. Oh,
I've got
which
no.
yeah,
I get it. It's all right.
yeah,
It's all right. I'll squeeze one in because I think you know
yeah,
it's a lovely thing that you put about you're mentioning there about your family coming to
yeah,
London and everything.
yeah.
Have you got a message for I know Wakefield has got behind you as well. Obviously, galleries all over the country are behind you. What is your message for the people that have supported your work through your history and will continue to do so?
Um, thank you, and yeah, thank you because each and every one of you, from Alan Chatterton, who taught me at Wakefield, to Mike Crowther at Cardiff, to the person that gave me Great Expectations for the first time, or said, "Read this," or they've all been part of this journey. Um, it's not. I mean, Hull. When I went to Hull, they had banners of my work all in the city centre. I mean, it's like a really a really weird fascist state. it's like being Mussolini. I got the same haircut and everything. It was really odd, but kind of beautiful that
Yeah.
there was like really strong, colourful depictions of disability
Mm,
all along, right to the train station
mm,
from Ferrens, and I thought that is absolutely magical.
mm,
And I would say a message as well to Wakefield Trinity, who I hope beat Sheffield in the at Wembley in June, because that's quite important, and get back into Super League. That'd be quite nice. I'm a rugby league supporter as well, so yeah, there's not much of it down here in the Midlands, but yeah, it's that's all part of it, into who you are.
absolutely, yeah. And thank you so much for giving me a clearer picture of the person you are as well, some of those influences and the work you do with young people is amazing. So Jason, all the very best for the future. I'm going to be keeping in touch and following along because
Absolutely.
I've drawn a lot from our chat today. So thank you so much for making the time, and it's amazing stuff you're doing.
Oh,
Wonderful.
it's been brilliant, mate. Thank you.